She was the face of a revolution, the woman who made the world believe no one could beat her. But then, the impossible happened. A single kick shattered her empire. Her confidence turned to chaos, her fame into pure humiliation. From UFC glory to WWE disaster, Ronda Rousey went from being worshipped to being booed off the stage. Fans turned, friends distanced, and the woman who once called herself the best in the world was suddenly fighting for her reputation. Accusations, backlash, explosive interviews where she lashed out at everyone, even the fans who made her famous. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, it did. Because behind that tough exterior was a truth no one saw coming. A story of pride, pain, and the downfall of a queen who thought she was untouchable. Before the fame, before the headlines, Ronda Rousey was just a kid fighting to survive. Born with a speech disorder and raised by a single mother who was a judo champion, she grew up in a house where pain wasn't weakness. It was training. Her father's tragic passing when she was only 8 lit a fire that never went out. Every punch, every throw, every drop of sweat was a way to keep his memory alive. By her teens, Ronda was a machine, cold, relentless. She fought like someone who had nothing left to lose, because in her mind, she didn't. At just 21, she made history, the first American woman to win an Olympic medal in judo. But that wasn't enough. She wanted more, the spotlight, the dominance, the power. And then came MMA. In the cage, she wasn't just winning, she was dismantling people. After armbar, after victory, fights ended before fans could even blink. The world had never seen a woman fight like this. Dana White said he'd never allow women in the UFC till Ronda Rousey made him eat those words. She became a global icon overnight. Interviews, endorsements, magazine covers. Everyone called her the baddest woman on the planet. And Ronda believed it, every word. But that's where the danger began. Because when you start thinking you can't lose, that's when the fall becomes inevitable. And trust me, it was coming faster than anyone expected. By 2014, Ronda Rousey wasn't just a fighter. She was a phenomenon, the perfect mix of beauty, violence, and confidence. Hollywood wanted her. Sponsors worshipped her. The UFC built entire cards around her name. Inside the cage, she was untouchable. 12 wins, 11 by armbar. Fights ending in under a minute. Her opponents didn't just lose, they froze. The stare down alone broke them before the first punch landed. But outside the cage, something was shifting. The humility that once grounded her had vanished. Every interview became louder, bolder, sharper. "I'm the greatest fighter in the world," she said in. And she meant it. But that wasn't confidence anymore. It was belief turned blind. Online forums called her a one-trick pony. Critics said she couldn't handle a real striker. Ronda laughed it off, brushing it aside like noise beneath a queen's throne. She didn't train to evolve. She trained to prove people wrong. And that mindset, that unshakable ego, became her greatest weakness. Her rivalries grew nastier. Trash talk turned personal. And soon, fans who once adored her started to notice the cracks. The same media that built her up began whispering the word overrated. But Ronda wasn't listening. She was too busy preparing for the next headline fight. A showdown that would change everything, because waiting on the other side of that cage was a woman who didn't care about Ronda's fame, her bravado, or her legend. Her name was Holly Holm, and the night they met, Ronda Rousey's world would never be the same again. November 14th, 2015, Melbourne, Australia. The crowd was electric. The queen of MMA was about to defend her crown again. Ronda Rousey walked in like a storm, unbeaten, untouchable, unstoppable. She glared across the octagon at her opponent, calm, quiet Holly Holm, a world boxing champion with ice in her veins. To Ronda, Holm was just another victim. She even mocked her in interviews, saying, "She's gonna try to kick me in the head, but it's not gonna go like that." Famous last words. The bell rang. From the first second, Holm's strategy was clear. Distance, precision, discipline. Ronda charged forward, wild, emotional, desperate to prove a point. But Holm was a sniper. Every time Ronda lunged, Holm struck. A jab, a cross, a movement that made Ronda miss by inches. And pay for it. By the end of round 1, the invincible champion looked lost. Her face swelling, her breathing heavy. Fans in the arena could feel it. Something historic was happening. Then came round 2. 30 seconds in, Holm threw the kick Ronda swore would never land. A left high kick. Perfect timing, perfect aim. It slammed into Ronda's jaw like a hammer hitting glass. She crumbled. The world went silent. In that single instant, everything changed. The unbeatable icon, broken. The face of women's MMA, on the canvas. Holm raised her arms as the referee waved it off. Shockwaves ripped through the arena, through every TV, through every fan who once believed Ronda couldn't fall. And as Ronda stumbled away, her lips split, eyes vacant. The truth hit harder than any punch ever could. Her reign was over. But that wasn't the end of her story. Because what came after that night was far more brutal than any fight she'd ever faced. The head kick didn't just knock Ronda out, it shattered the illusion. Overnight, the queen of MMA became the internet's favorite punchline. Memes, mockery, headlines that once praised her now ripped her apart. For the first time, Ronda faced what she'd spent her life avoiding: failure. And she couldn't handle it. She disappeared. No interviews, no training footage, no bravado. Months later, she finally spoke. Not with confidence, but with tears. "What am I anymore if I'm not this?" she asked. "I'm nothing." It was the first time fans saw her vulnerable, and they didn't all forgive her. Because the truth is, people loved her power, not her pain. And now that she'd lost, the same fans who once screamed her name were calling her overrated. Her aura was gone, her myth destroyed. But instead of rebuilding, Ronda spiraled. She surrounded herself with yes men, shut out critics, and refused to evolve. When she finally returned to the octagon, facing Amanda Nunes, the world waited to see if the old Ronda was back. But she wasn't. She walked in looking hollow, the fire in her eyes replaced by fear. The fight lasted 48 seconds. Nunes came out swinging. Jabs, crosses, chaos. Ronda barely reacted. The referee stopped it before she could take more damage. And just like that, her UFC career ended. Not with a roar, but with silence. Ronda left the arena without a word. No interviews, no goodbyes. The once invincible champion had vanished from the sport she built. But that wasn't the end. Because soon, Ronda would try to reinvent herself again. This time, not as a fighter, but as an entertainer. And what happened next was even more chaotic. When Ronda Rousey stepped into WWE, it felt like redemption. New stage, new crowd, a chance to rewrite her legacy. At first, it worked. Her debut was electric. Fans cheered like the queen had returned. The power, the attitude, the judo throws, it was all there. Ronda was smiling again, confident again, alive again. But that didn't last long. Because WWE is a different kind of fight. Not just with fists, but with fans. And Ronda never learned that part. When the audience booed her, she didn't play along. She snapped. She called wrestling fake. She mocked the very people who paid to see her. "It's scripted," she said. "It's made up, it's not real." That was the moment everything flipped. The fans turned vicious. Her locker room relationships soured. WWE veterans started calling her entitled, ungrateful, even arrogant. One insider put it bluntly, "Ronda didn't get it. She thought she was bigger than the show." And that attitude burned bridges fast. By 2023, the cheers were gone. Crowds booed louder every time she entered the ring. She looked bored, disconnected, like she'd rather be anywhere else. And behind the scenes, rumors spread that WWE was done with her. Then came the final blow. Ronda was quietly written off storylines, cut from appearances without warning. The once baddest woman on the planet was now an outsider in the very world she thought she'd conquered. But instead of walking away gracefully, Ronda doubled down, blaming the company, the fans, and even her opponents. And what she said next would ignite one of the biggest controversies of her career. By 2025, Ronda Rousey's name was no longer feared. It was divisive. She had gone from pioneer to pariah. On podcasts, she lashed out at everyone. The UFC, WWE, the fans. She even mocked Alexa Bliss, saying it was F*******ing ridiculous she ever had to face her just because Bliss sold more merchandise. The backlash was instant. AEW's MJF fired back online saying, "It's almost like wrestling is a business." His sarcasm cut deep, and fans piled on. Suddenly, Ronda wasn't seen as a legend anymore. She was a bitter has-been throwing punches at ghosts. Her book release only made things worse. Instead of inspiration, it was filled with excuses, blaming old injuries, concussions, even stair accidents for her defeats. One fan's comment went viral. "My ligament had a concussion. My car wouldn't start. My dog ate my homework. Classic Ronda. The woman who once represented strength had become a symbol of denial. Even her peers, like Misha Tate, started calling her out, saying she had a rotten attitude and refused to take accountability. And when reporters asked about a comeback, Ronda laughed. I ain't fighting at the ******ing White House. I got better things to do. My kid needs pasta. The quote spread everywhere and half funny, half tragic. But away from the spotlight, something had changed. She wasn't chasing belts anymore. She wasn't fighting for fame. She was just quiet, training privately, raising her 2 kids, and trying, maybe for the first time, to find peace without applause. Because after everything, the titles, the fame, the chaos, Ronda Rousey finally learned the one lesson no one could teach her in the octagon. You can't fight the world forever. Ronda Rousey's story isn't just about glory or defeat. It's about what happens when pride outgrows purpose. She changed sports forever, no one can deny that. But somewhere along the way, the hunger that built her turned into the ego that broke her. Now she lives far from the roar of the crowd. No belts, no cheers, no headlines, just silence. And maybe that's exactly what she needed all along. Because legends aren't remembered for how loud they were, but for how they rise once the noise fades.